Welcome to Field of Screams podcast. Today we will be talking about the original Hellraiser. Many people say it's a classic. Pinhead is extremely recognizable. Some people even put Hellraiser or Pinhead in their Mount Rushmore. One of the OGs, one of the best of all times. It's known for being bloody, disturbing, and I've only seen this movie one other time, and it was when I was younger. I've seen the second one also, but I don't remember a whole lot from it. But I have not seen all the other movies, and the plan is to cover each and every Hellraiser movie. And I heard that is a daunting task. I follow other podcasts, and a lot of them do not cover all the Hellraiser movies, and I'm like, why don't we give it a shot? So without further ado, let's get started on the review of the very first movie. Let's talk about the beginning of this film. So the beginning of the film opens up with a man who buys this puzzle box. We later find out this man, his name is Frank. But he buys this puzzle box, takes it to his house, solves the puzzle. And this puzzle box is known as the Lament Configuration. I'm pretty sure is the technical name for it. I might just call it puzzle box because that's easier to say. But once he solves it, gigantic chains with hooks latches onto him. And he starts being subjected to torture in this different type of realm. And he basically gets torn apart by the end of it. The aftermath, there's like blood and guts everywhere. You see his face ripped into different parts. Very, very bloody scene. So if you're heading into this movie and you're like, Hellraiser. Like, I wonder how intense this movie really is. The opening does a great job setting that foundation. After the opening carnage, we get introduced to our main characters in the story. We have Larry and we have Julia. They are a married couple. They're moving into Larry's brother's old house, I believe. That's whose house it was, Frank's old house. And while they were in there, Larry, he's talking about their marriage, seems like a very good husband. He's trying to move furniture around. You can tell there's a little tension in the marriage. But as this is going on, you kind of find out that Julia had a secret. And that secret was that she had an affair with Larry's brother, Frank. You kind of find out Frank is a very scuzzy dude. Kind of unlike Larry. Larry just seems like a nice guy overall. Frank, on the other hand, just kind of a trashy guy. There's not a lot of good things to say about him, but Julia is obsessed with him. There's a scene that actually made me laugh. Julia's having a flashback of her and Frank having sex, and it's going between that and then a shot of Larry carrying a mattress up a staircase. I don't know, just like both of them grunting over different reasons. But while Larry is grunting carrying that mattress, you see this nail sticking out, and you're kind of like, he's gonna scrape his hand on that nail. And man, the way he does this gigantic cut on his hand, it's almost like someone took a machete to his hand. It cuts deep. And it even gets to a part where Julia's upstairs daydreaming, and Larry comes up, and he's just holding his hand out, and the camera's like right in front of his hand, and there's just like blood shooting everywhere, and he's like, I think I'm cut. And Julia's like, oh my God, what did you do? And he's like, it was a nail. But blood gets all over the floor, and when that happens, it starts off this whole process of Frank being resurrected from the little evil dimension that he got sucked into the first 10 seconds of the movie. Now this right here is the strength of this film. The practical effects where it shows Frank being reborn, like he looks like an insect, just kind of being built from the ground up. They use a lot of reverse engineering effects. Blood that seems like it's just kind of like pulling out of the floor, blood being soaked into the floor. It's all really cool looking, and even as I watch it today, I'm kind of like, man, this looks really good for the time that this movie was made. This is definitely, the practical effects are definitely the strong suit of this movie. And as you're seeing Frank kind of just being like coming out of the floorboards, you just almost got to just respect what they did back then. Like, it was really awesome looking. Now, eventually, Julia finds Frank. And Frank, again, he looks like an insect. I would say he looks like a human without skin. But that's not even true, because even some of his meat's still torn away. Like, the Cenobites, which we're gonna, that's what we learned to call them later on. They did a number on Frank, and he looks absolutely disgusting. And he's like, "Julia, it's me, Frank," and she's like, "I'll still help you." And it's like, how can you be so obsessed with a person to where they look worse than a zombie, and you're like, "Oh, I gotta help him so we can run away together." Like, there's no way she liked Frank for his personality. But yet, here she is. She's like, "How can I help you?" And there's only one way to bring Frank back to his natural form, and that is to kill people in this house to where he can, like, take in their energy or soak up their blood. I think that's what it was. He's like soaking up their blood. But towards the later of the film, it's almost like he's draining energy from them, like sucking the life out of them. So Julia is all aboard for this. She's like, yeah, why not? Like, I'm going to help out Frank. So Julia gets in deep with Frank, pun intended. She's literally like bringing men from the bar and killing them, or like just wounding them very badly, so then Frank's decrepit body could like crawl over and consume them. And like while she's doing all of this, I mean, like the first kill, it shows the first kill really well. She like hits a guy with a hammer, and then you see like Frank like crawling over. And as there's more and more deaths and more people that Julia's helping kill, Frank is like adding more meat onto him. Like he's becoming meaty Frank now. Now, as he's getting more meat added onto him, like I already talked about the practical effects, he is more oozing. He looks very like wet. And again, like it's just very gross. But like even as this process is happening, like Frank starts to put on like this shirt. It's like the undershirt to a suit or a tuxedo that's like pure white. And he's putting this on when he doesn't have skin, so like the blood and the gore is like soaking through this white shirt, and it almost just makes you cringe. It's like, oh dude, like that shirt's ruined. What are you doing, Frank? But while all this is going on, like I haven't really talked about all the other characters, because like this is like a huge plot point throughout the movie. You spend a lot of time following Julia around, just killing people for Frank consuming them, and then like Frank kind of regenerating. And it's all very cool practical effects, and it's cool seeing the evolution of Frank. But we have Larry, who like she's doing all of this while Larry's at work, and Larry is just the best dude ever. He does not deserve Julia, or Julia doesn't deserve Larry, I should say. There's even a point to where he gets home and one of the guys gets killed, like he gets drained. And of course Frank don't care. He's like, "Figure it out, Julia." And Julia freaks out, like runs to the bathroom and like carries the dead body with her. And Larry like knocks on the door, and he's like trying to joke with her. He's like, "You want a cookie?" And she's like, "Oh, I don't feel well." And like he looks completely concerned. He's like, "Oh, well, take your time, like I just want you to feel better." And like she just like continues to lie to him. There's even a point in this film to where him and Julia go to have sex, and Frank kind of like rounds the corner, and he's like holding out a dead rat and pulls out a knife and starts cutting the rat open. And Julia starts like crying, and Larry like turns around, and Frank's out of the room by this point. And Larry's like, "I don't get you. At one point you're all over me, and then you start crying and you're telling me to stop. I don't understand." And Julia just like walks out. You really feel for Larry. So we talked about Frank, we talked about Julia, we talked about Larry. We also got to talk about Kirsty. Kirsty is Larry's daughter, and Julia is the stepmom, I believe. Larry even makes a comment because one of the guys helping move stuff into the house, they try to make a joke like, "Oh, she has her mother's looks," because like these guys are being pervy for some reason. And Larry's just like, "Her mom's dead." And they're like, "Oh." So you kind of find out in that detail. But Kirsty is just kind of living her life. She finds a boyfriend, and it's kind of funny because in the beginning, she's like eyeing him and he's eyeing her. And then he's like, "Let me show you something." And he takes a lit cigarette and like shoves the whole thing in his mouth and just sits there and then pops it back out of his mouth. And she's like, "Whoa." And it's like, that's such an 80s type trick to do. Like, you don't see that happening in movies anymore and that being looked at as cool. Nowadays, if they had to remake that scene, they would put like an entire vape in someone's mouth or something. It just doesn't really translate to current times, but I just found it funny. But Kirsty, she kind of sets off like, I would almost call it the third act, because he spends so long with Frank and Julia. But eventually Kirsty walks in on Julia and Frank murdering someone. And when she sees the murdered person, they literally look like a messed up pizza roll. Like the body's just mangled. And if that's not enough, like Frank kind of storms out. And by this point, he has a complete suit. Like he's not just wearing the white undersuit, he's wearing the complete suit. And Frank walks out and he's like, "It's me, Uncle Frank." And she's like, "No." Of course she would say no, because, he doesn't have skin yet. And he's like, "Yes." And he's being very creepy. He keeps calling her beautiful. He keeps trying to touch her, which there's a thing in this movie, especially Julia and Frank. They love to touch each other's mouths. And later on when a Cenobite comes out, he shoves two fingers in Kirsty's mouth. And it's like, man, keep the fingers out of the mouth, guys. Let's go. Like, there's germs. With COVID's going on. But I believe he tries to do the same to Kirsty during this confrontation. But she sees the little puzzle box, and she takes it. And he's like, "No, give it back." And she pulls the ultimate trick. She throws it out the window, and then runs out of the house and picks it back up and runs away. That's her big trick. And when she throws it out the window, Frank's like, "No!" and just does not move at all. And Kirsty just sprints out, picks it up, and gets away. It's like, oh, that was very easy to evade Frank. Kirsty eventually solves the puzzle herself, and she wakes up in a hospital because she passes out when she runs away. But when she wakes up in the hospital, that's when she solves the puzzle. And it's cool, the walls open up. Again, the practical effects, you gotta love it in this movie. There's a big demon that chases her, but the Cenobites become summoned. And, there's the classics. I know they all have their nicknames. One of them's like Chatter, like its mouth is constantly going. It looks like a little gigantic wind-up toy where its mouth just repeats over and over again. Deep Throat, which is like a lady with a gigantic cut in her throat. There's Pinhead, the most popular one. And then there's one where it's like a fat guy with sunglasses. And I guess his eyes are sewn in. But with the sunglasses, he kind of reminds me of Patrick Star from SpongeBob when they're performing at the Bourbon Bowl or whatever bowl it was. I don't know if anyone remembers that episode. I'm not doing a great job describing it. But yeah, he reminded me of Patrick Star. But, the Cenobites come out and they kind of explain the rules of the puzzle box because she's like, "I didn't mean to solve it." And they're like, "That doesn't matter. You're coming with us." And the Cenobites, they mean business. Everything they say is just very firm in these scenes. And they have some just very, very cool lines that you gotta love. She starts crying and they're like, "No tears, please. It's a waste of good suffering." And then there's even a part at the end, they're like, "We have such sights to show you." But they want to take Kirsty right away. But she's like, "Wait, I have an evil uncle that escaped you guys." And they're like, "That's impossible." And she's like, "No, not really, he did. He doesn't have skin. I'm pretty sure he escaped you guys." And they make a deal with Kirsty. They're like, "Well, if you can prove it, then we'll take him." And she's like, "All right, and then I'll be good, right?" And then Pinhead's just like, "Maybe." And I said, "Maybe we might leave you here." And it's like, oh, why would I go for that deal? You're just giving me a maybe. Everyone knows that maybe means no. When you're a kid and you ask your parent for something, they're like, "Oh, maybe." You know that you're probably not going to get it. But Kirsty, she doesn't have a lot of options. So she ends up going back to the house. Now, with this part of the film, Frank decides to kill Larry and take his skin. So Frank is now wearing Larry's skin. And the whole plan is that they're going to trick Kirsty and then they're going to kill her, take her skin. And I think Frank thinks by this point, he's like, if I kill Kirsty, the process will be complete. Which I don't know how he can measure that, but whatever. But one of my gripes, I feel like everything in this movie's done perfect. And we kind of get to the end here, and I feel like things are a little rushed. Like, I feel like whenever they made this movie, they had a lot of good ideas, but not a lot of time to put them all in and let them just bake and execute. I feel like we could have spent less time with Julia, killing all the guys from the bar and feeding them to Frank. And I know that's a very cool part, and that's where we can make our practical effects work. But it gets to this point to where Kirsty comes home and she's talking to who she thinks is Larry, but really it's Frank. And, Frank he's acting weird in Larry's skin. You can tell it's not Larry. And Kirsty's like tricked at first. And, Frank literally has blood running down Larry's head. Like, it's not hidden very well. And Kirsty's just like kind of buying it. There's a point to where Kirsty says, I want proof that Frank is dead. And he goes, Julia, go show her that, Frank is dead. So she walks into a room and there's just like a dead carcass. And Julia like slams the door behind her, which isn't suspicious at all. And then the Cenobites pop up and they're like, oh, we want whoever did this. And Kirsty's just like, okay. And she walks out of the room and Julia puts her like in a full Nelson. It's like, what are you doing, Julia? Like, I thought you were trying to trick her. But Kirsty gets away anyways, and she's all like, Larry, like, Julia's being weird. And Julia's like, no, I'm not. And then, like, she finds out that it's a trick anyways. Like, this whole deception act, like, I feel like it carries on for, like, 40 seconds. And then Frank is just like, well, I guess the cat and mouse game's over, huh? And, like, pulls out a knife. And it's like, okay, I thought we would have done more with that. But, and he starts calling her beautiful and everything, and he goes to stab her, and he misses, and he stabs Julia, and Julia's like, no, not me. And then Frank's just like, oh, well, and then just drains the crap out of Julia, and ends Julia right then and there. And it's like, oh, man, like, this ending's flying 1,000 miles per hour. And we get, like, a little bit of a chase and stalk scene, and then eventually Frank corners Kirsty, and he starts kind of like evil monologuing, saying basically he did it. And when he goes to kill Kirsty, the Xenobites, like, they pop up, the chains with the hook start going into his arm, his face, and it's really cool because by this point it's Larry's skin, but Larry's skin is spread out like Play-Doh. And he just kind of looks at the camera and he's like, Jesus wept. And then he's torn to pieces. And by that point, I'm kind of like, okay, they should have ended the movie right then and there. Because here's my thing. If you end the movie right then and there, you can kind of drag out the parts to where Frank is being Larry and he's tricking Kirsty. You could kind of build that up more. You could get more of a fight with Julia, not just the accidental stabbing and the draining. We could have got more of a... Because, let's be honest, they're the real antagonist of the film. Like, they're the bad guys. Like, the Xenobites, they're just kind of like forces of nature. Like, they're almost like cops in this film, like spirit cops. Like, oh, what? Frank broke out of our realm? Well, we got to go get him. Like, that's, like, literally their role for this film. So, if they just would have, like, stopped it here and had the Cenobites, just kind of tell Kirsty, like, oh, we'll be back, or, give the puzzle box to someone else and we could haunt them, because they want to make sequels, especially if it's successful. So give that little ending to where you might be able to have sequels. But instead, what we get is after Frank is torn to pieces and the bad guy is now gone, Kirsty's like, oh, I guess I'll walk outside. And the Cenobites are like, where do you think you're going? And that's where they deliver the cool line of, we have such sights to show you. And they start chasing her around the house. But then you run into the problem, like, these little beings are so strong. How do you take them out? And how do you take them out in a timely fashion to where we're trying to make this movie an hour and 30 minutes, and we're like at an hour and 20 minutes, and we need to wrap up this conclusion, in the next 10 minutes. Like, what are we going to do? And so they take Kirsty and they have her like reverse engineer the puzzle box. And she starts zapping these Cenobites left and right. And they're just like disappearing. And it's kind of like, oh, they were so powerful and they were able to do anything they wanted. But little Kirsty here can just flip the puzzle box and she can now zap them and they go away. And like while she's doing that, Pinhead's like, no, don't do that. And then she like zaps him. The Patrick Star Cenobite. He's literally like in the hallway. Hold on, I'm getting ahead of myself. While this is going on and she's zapping all these, gods away, her boyfriend knocks on the door. And so she lets him in, like during all of this madness. And like this house is falling apart, and the boyfriend like runs in the house, like, "Hey, what's going on, Kirsty?" And the Patrick Star Cenobite is like in a hallway, and he takes off his sunglasses to reveal that his eyes are sewn shut. Like, ooh, like that's your big that's your big move? Like, that's what you got? I was laughing during this. And he doesn't even die by the box. Like, rubble from the house falls on top of him. And he's like, "Bah!" And he dies. So, like, all these Cenobites die in the span of, like, 8 seconds. And it's like, oh, wow. Like, that was weird. Like, they felt, like, super powerful, like, 30 minutes ago. But that happens. And you'd think it would be done at this point. Kirsty and her boyfriend, they walk out of the house, and the house is on fire. They watch the house burn down to rubble. Like, they literally just watch it burn all the way down to the ground. And like, they do like a fast forward, a time jump, and it looks like there's like 3 bonfires going on in the background, and there's a chair on fire, like near the camera. And Kirsty takes the puzzle box and throws it into the fire. And a homeless man walks up, which he is in the movie earlier. He walks up. Actually, before this part even happens, there's like a mega demon that was in the movie before too, and they had to zap him away as well. But I mean, like, I don't have to explain that. But this homeless guy walks up to the puzzle box, which is in the fire, picks it up. He catches on fire. Then he turns into a dragon, and he flies away with the box. And the dragon gives it to the dealer who gave it to Frank in the beginning of the movie. And then the movie ends. So just to clarify the ending, Frank kills Larry, puts on his skin. Frank then accidentally kills Julia, then drains her life. Julia's gone. The Cenobites kill Frank and tear him to pieces and send him back to the torture realm. The Cenobites then turn on Kirsty, who then reverse engineers the puzzle box and zaps most of them away. Kirsty's boyfriend shows up at the house while it's falling apart. They see the Patrick Star Cenobite in the hallway. Rubble falls on top of him and kills him. After that, a gigantic mega demon comes out, and they have to destroy that, which they do. They then walk out of the house. The house is on fire. It burns all the way down to the ground where there's rubble, and it looks like there's a couple bonfires and a chair's on fire. Kirsty throws the puzzle box into the fire. A homeless man walks up, grabs the puzzle box, catches on fire, turns into a dragon, takes it to the dealer who was in the beginning of the movie, and the movie's now over. There's just way too much there in the ending. It feels goofy that there's so much there. As I was watching it, I remember thinking there was too much the first time I watched it, but especially this time I was like, wow, yeah, I was not exaggerating there. And the thing that kind of kills me, again, I think I mentioned this earlier in the review, but I mean, this entire movie revolves around Julia and Frank. They are the bad people in this movie. They are the bad guys. Kirsty is the good person. And the Cenobites in this movie, they are just like a cool, natural force that just occurs in this movie. And I know Pinhead is the selling point. He's on all the cover art for this movie. If you tune into this movie expecting the Pinhead show, you're going to be greatly disappointed. He's in this movie for 10 or 15 minutes. Now, those 10 or 15 minutes are fantastic and great. But I mean, like, this movie, it has a good story. It really does. The whole Julia being obsessed with Frank while she has the husband Larry, and then you got Kirsty. I like all that. But the ending just felt like they had like too much budget, and they're like, what else can we throw in? What else would be scarier? These Cenobites, they look cool. Why don't we just have them like turn on Kirsty too? And that little mega demon, like, let's get him in on the action. We'll have her blow him up as well. And you remember that homeless dude who ate crickets in the beginning of the movie? Let's just have him turn into a dragon. Like, what are we doing? Like, I feel like we all have that one friend who they'll come over to watch like a couple movies, maybe a couple scary movies, and then you get to the point where like it's 2 a.m. and everyone's tired, and you kind of read the room and you're like, yeah, we're probably done now. But there's always that one friend who's like, guys, I know this other good movie that's like 3 hours long. Like, we could start it right now and we could end it at a decent time. And then you gotta like talk them down, like, nah, not tonight, man. Like, we'll do that another night. That's what they should have done with the writer who wanted this ending in here. Like, the Cenobites attacking people and all that. That sounds really cool. But let's save that for a sequel. Let's save some of that budget, Like, this movie's about Julia and Frank. Like, let's have it revolve around them. Or here's the thing, if you wanted to include the Cenobites attacking them at the end, wind down the time to where Julia's feeding Frank, all the people from the bar. And if you cut that down just a little bit, like, even make that a montage instead of like scene after scene of her dragging people in there. You could have cut down on that. Then you could have dragged on the hospital scene and all the stuff with the Cenobites, make them untrustworthy, to where, at the end, like, it doesn't go the way that Kirsty hopes it will. That's something they could have done, then it wouldn't be so centrally focused on Frank and Julia, and then it would be more Cenobites in the movie to where, it would make sense that they're attacking in the end. But, this is just the gripe I have with the end itself. The movie overall, I mean, great practical effects, the gore is crazy. When you get done watching this movie, you feel like you need to take a shower. You just feel a little dirty or a little slimy. But it is a good movie, and I can see why a lot of people, look at it as a classic. It's definitely different. It isn't, not the typical slasher, not the typical, Halloween or Friday the 13th type movies. Like, it is kind of its own beast. And it does go to the beat of its own drum, which is really cool. I think Ashley Lawrence did a great job as Kirsty. I think most of it was like pretty well acted. There's a couple cheesy lines in it, but nothing to drag it down. Honestly, if they just kind of added more focus in the end, I think this is just a very, very good movie. But overall, I liked it a lot. So this has been my review of Hellraiser. I almost forgot what it was called. I almost said Nightmare on Elm Street. I don't know why. I already did that. But this has been my review of Hellraiser. If you enjoyed it, please give this video a like. It gets it out to other people. If you haven't subscribed yet, make sure you do. And thank you so much again for still listening. Until next time, guys.